Good evening, everyone. I'm a little bit sick, so bear with me. Let's get to the election prediction. The meat, what we want to know: who's going to win the state of Washington? That's going to be Kamala Harris. Trump's not improving. He may improve a little bit, but won't improve enough to make it likely. Nor in the state of Oregon. In California, I believe he will improve, maybe upwards of 10 points, simply because of his Hispanic gains and also just other gains in the state of California. California was one of the three states in the 2020 election to shift to the right of the country as the country shifted 2.5 points to the left. Same with the state of Hawaii. Hawaii was also one of the other three states to do that as well. So we will see this state shift towards the right, but not enough to make this a close race in any capacity. Next, we have the state of Illinois. Illinois is going to be closer this time, may even become a likely margin, but there hasn't been any conclusive data suggesting. And either way, there will be no point of predicting that Illinois will be likely, since this race will unlikely involve Illinois being an important factor. Next, we have the state of Delaware. Joe Biden's home state is going to stay solid blue. Even though it will probably shift to the right, it won't be enough to make this a likely state. Same thing with the state of Maryland. D.C., of course, the most Democratic electoral votes in the entire nation. Next, we have the state of Connecticut, and this will be close-ish. It won't break likely unless there's some crazy circumstances, but this will probably be a 11, 12, 13, 14 Harris Point victory. Same with the state of Rhode Island. Massachusetts will probably get a little bit closer, but Massachusetts in our lifetimes will probably never vote Republican simply because of how the demographics are factored in the state, and just the voters are much more left-leaning in the state of Massachusetts. Same thing with Vermont, and Maine's first will again vote solidly Democratic. Now, let's talk about our solid Republicans. Montana, no-brainer. Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska first, and Nebraska at large. And you'll wonder, why am I stating that a lot of these Democrat states are going to get closer and Republican states, and I'm not talking about the Republican states in the same way, is because there's no indication that national shifts are in favor of Democrats in this election. If Trump even gets within a point of Kamala Harris in the popular vote, these shifts will all happen in the blue states, and so it's unlikely that most red states are going to shift to the left. Some will, but most won't. There has been a poll that shows Kansas as a likely race, but that tends to happen. I'm still going to give it to a solid Republican margin. Same with Oklahoma, Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and South Carolina. And we are going to add Ohio. This state is going to vote more to the right than it did in 2016 or 20. And this is going to be interesting because most of you are predicting, Ohio is going to be likely, or Ohio is going to be he's not going to shift that much, even though chances are he's going to shift. What has been seen, what I have seen from other people making predictions, is that left wingers are making extremely conservative predictions, like, Harris is going to magically sweep the Rust Belt. And while it was possible for a very close victory, like in 2008, or not 2008, when 2000, when Bush barely won the Electoral College, or 2004, when he also barely won the Electoral College, this is 2024. The states that are in play all shift with each other. These three shift with each other. These two and these two shift with each other for the most part. So we're going to see shifts be sort of in play with each other. Iowa's also going to be a solid margin. We saw that D+3 from the Seltzer poll. That poll is absolutely ridiculous. Democrats will probably lose Iowa by a solid margin, and that indicates something about how these two states are going to vote, and I'll talk about that in a second. Finally, we have the state of Florida. Florida is going to vote to the right of the state of Texas. You heard it here first. Cubans are just far too right, and the registration advantage in Florida for Republicans is quite insane in this election. But also, Florida has moved to the right off a cliff. Next, we'll do our likely Republican states. We're going to go with the state of Texas. The state of Texas is a state that is going to vote more to the right than it did in 2020. However, it's going to be a likely margin. I predict Trump will win it by 6, 7, or 8, maybe even 9. Maybe he does win it by a solid margin, but I don't think that is likely. Next up is the state of Alaska. There have been polls showing this to be a likely race, and judging by the shifts from 2016 to 20, I believe this race will get closer, and he might win it by 9. He might win it by a solid margin, but I expect this race to be closer. And we are going to make some predictions about Nevada and Georgia, both being likely margins. The early vote data supports this, and it seems like Trump is doing good enough with the demographic groups that this is sort of what's going to happen in these states. And you might dispute this, and this might be a lean margin. You might only win this by a lean margin, but I'm going to go with my gut here and say that it's going to win it by a likely margin. In the state of Colorado, she'll win it by a likely margin. Could she win it solid? Yes, she could. But I'm going to give her a likely. In the state of New York, she's going to win by a likely margin. This is going to be a wild bet. I think Trump's going to get within 10. He could get he could easily lose it with over 10, but I'm going to guesstimate based on error of polls and just overall what I think he's going to get within 10. And Nebraska, or not Nebraska, sorry. And let's move to our lean states. So let's lean the Democratic states first. New Mexico, he will get within 5. I just believe that's the case. Source, just trust me, bro. He's visiting Virginia and New Mexico. That's because his internals show him doing well in those states. Internals have shown him doing bad in the state of Minnesota this entire time. But that doesn't mean that the internals are right, because sometimes you mistake your support amongst African Americans, like in the state of Virginia, which 20-something odd percent of the voting population is African American, or Hispanics in New Mexico, which 40-something odd percent is Hispanic. And you say, well, gee, I'm outperforming with these groups. Let me go visit these 2 states. That is why he's not visiting New Hampshire, Maine, or Minnesota, because he thinks he's doing worse with the sort of white non-college vote, which is just not going to happen. I believe that won't materialize, and we'll see the most of the errors will be due to underestimating Donald Trump's share with that white college and non-college vote. Next will be the state of Virginia. She will win this by a lean margin, probably 2 to 3 to 4. She could win it by likely. I doubt it. He wouldn't be investing much time in that state if she was going to win it by 7 or something points. Next is going to be the state of Maine. In my last video, I did say Maine might be closer than New Hampshire. I'm going to go back on that. Say it's going to be not closer. But I will say this. He is going to solidly win the 2nd district. Now, could he flip Maine? Yes. Do I think it's likely, considering the data that the internal polls of each of these people have? No. Simply because no one's visiting Maine, Trump nor Harris. He's more likely to win the state of New Hampshire. So we have the state of New Jersey. Again, these 2 are going to vote in part. If this is solid, this will be likely. If this is likely, this will be lean. I don't think he will win the state of New Jersey. He might pull it off, but there has been polls against Joe Biden, at least, where he was going to win the state of New Jersey, but it's a different person on the ticket, and neither candidate is paying all that much time. However, I think he will get within a lean or likely margin in the state of New Jersey, and this bodes well for our first lean Republican state, which will be the state of Pennsylvania. He will win this by 3 or 2 points. That is just my judgment. He is going to improve around 3 points from his 2020 margins. Next is the state of Michigan, which he will win by 2 points. He will win Wisconsin by 4 points. It'll be in that order. Wisconsin will be as strong as Rust Belt State, and anybody who tells you otherwise is simply out of their head, because Wisconsin will be its strongest Rust Belt state. It has been 2016-20. It will be again in 2024. It's the only state that voted for a red senator in 2022, or someone to hold a Republican to hold office in 2022. But polls consistently underestimate him in the state of Wisconsin. They're going to do so again, and the state of Michigan as well, but to a lesser extent, because that is his worst state usually. But there's indications with the Arab American vote. There's polls that show him winning the Arab American vote nationally. If he does that, he might outperform Michigan than Pennsylvania, but I believe that it'll go Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, just like it has gone every single time. And though they say, oh, he's going to lose one of these, or he's going to win Pennsylvania only, though that's just ridiculous. That's not how these states vote. They vote in together every election, and this election will be a little bit different, obviously, but vote together every election. If one of them votes for Trump, they're all going to vote for Trump. If one of them votes for Harris, they're all going to vote for Harris. And probably if Harris ends up sweeping these 3 states, she's probably going to end up sweeping our next lean states, which are going to be North Carolina and Georgia. Georgia might again, these 2 being likely is just simply based on what sort of patterns have emerged in the early vote and recent polling in these 2 states. North Carolina and Georgia. Georgia, I think, is going to be a lot closer than people expect, or a lot closer than the other states. North Carolina is going to be less close of a state. I think Trump wins North Carolina by 4. I think Georgia, he wins by 2-3. In the state of North Carolina, that was his best state in 2020. He won it. He will win again, and people are gonna. And we have already seen the Harris campaign pull ads out of the state of North Carolina. This is probably because they don't think that it's worth going after, which it really isn't. You don't need to get to 270 without North Carolina. You need Georgia, or you need these 3 to hold on, but that's not going to happen. You win. If Trump wins these 4, he's going to win these 3. And if we see an election like that, a 2016 repeat, with the exception of Nevada going Republican, that'll be very interesting. That'll be a fun cycle. Next, let's go to our lean Democratic states. We have, let's finish off, because I forgot to mention Nebraska second. This one I'm going to put as lean. It could go to Donald Trump. He could win it. It could be likely for Harris. But I think due to demographics going to be shifting this election, Trump will do better in Nebraska second than he did in 20. Now, let's move into our tilt states. And look, we have only 2 states in the tilt category. That means I'm not scared of betting on these states being wrong. I'm not trying to hedge my bets. Oh, look at me. I'm going to give him a very tight. Oh, she's going to tightly win in Michigan. Oh, she's going to tightly win in Wisconsin. No, because if these states all go, then these states all go. I'm not going to tell you that that's not going to happen, which it is. If she wins these 3, she's going to win these 3, right? That's just how the cookie crumbles. And it doesn't look good in these 3. So, and nor does it look good in Pennsylvania, and that's why people are betting he's going to somehow win it, but not win Wisconsin or Michigan, which is just not going to happen. So, she will barely squeak it out in New Hampshire. If we look at registration trends, Republicans have now a 40,000 registration advantage in the state of New Hampshire. Compare that with 2020, and Democrats at 20,000. That's 60,000 votes. Right there, that's the whole entire margin in the state of New Hampshire in 2020. However, states do this funny thing where when they shift badly. And so, yeah, there is a case that Trump could win New Hampshire. He's also sending surrogates to the state of New Hampshire. So are the Democrats, because they're worried about the state of New Hampshire. So could he win it? Yes. However, I think it's more of a red herring than the more likely case, which is he's going to win the state of Minnesota. And there has been polling that has shown close races in both these states. However, she is polling worse than Hillary Clinton. about the same as Joe Biden, though. Well, a little bit worse than Joe Biden. Joe Biden was polling better in the state of Minnesota back in 2020. And Joe Biden has a unique connection with white working class voters that Kamala Harris does not. So I don't think she's going to win the state of Minnesota this election. Now, it's in my tail category, so that means, oh shoot, she wins the state of Minnesota. My bad. But I'm predicting to be a lot closer than people are saying. People are saying, oh, she wins it by a likely margin. That's not going to happen. There's too many factors in play. You can't get within a point of the popular vote, or you can't win the popular vote as a Republican and not get close in some of these other states, which is going to happen. So it's ridiculous for people to say, can Donald Trump win the popular vote but lose the Electoral College? No, he cannot. That would be practically impossible, unless it was cheating. But again, we're going to presume that it doesn't exist. So, or it's not going to happen this time around at least. So here's the final map. This is probably a bullish prediction on Trump because no one has it winning outside of the 7 swing states. However, what Democrats say is, oh, well, she's going to win these 3 states. Maybe she wins Nevada, and somehow she's going to hold on 270, 276, or whatever. That's not going to happen. Sorry to say it, that's not how elections work. They go one way or the other, at least in this era. If this was Bush v. Gore, Bush v. Kerry, this was back in 2000 when Republicans were winning college-educated voters by a higher clip, and Democrats were winning non-college educated whites by a higher clip, you would see something like that. But that's not the case. This is not the world we live in. So, hope you all enjoyed. If y'all have any disagreements, put it in the comments below. This will be an interesting election. Hopefully tomorrow goes well for whoever you're voting for. And hopefully we get the results quick, because if we don't, we're going to have a lot of problems. Alright, y'all have a good night.